Okay, we are in the house of James Baker. JB.
Hey, everybody.
JB, what were you up to? I mean, we got a show to do, and what, you're cooking?
Make us a pasta,
Wait, you're not the Italian of the show.
That's right, yeah. Well, yeah, basically just trying to cook dinner for a family of 7. And it's quiet because everyone's either at practice or, in their rooms on their phones or something. But yes, typical Wednesday night, me cooking for 7 people and hoping that I don't burn the house down.
Well, we're all hoping that. There were some brutal moments a little while ago in that respect. Now, I want to turn around here. During the show, we can't really do this later on, but we're looking at the living room area. Is this kind of your man cave? Is this where you watch the games that you talk about?
Yes. Well, it can be in here or it can be in the actual man cave, which is over there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So, this is Orlando, Florida.
Yes.
2020. Everybody wants to know, will you come to games?
I would really like to do that this fall. I am going to try to make a concerted effort to at least go to 1, maybe 2 games this season. It's time.
It's time. You know what time it is? It's time for our postseason show on In the Huddle.
That's fun.
Well, we are no longer in JB's kitchen. So the episode that was intended to run in basically February, as things were starting to happen naturally in the college football world in Division III, it was causing a lot of changes in the content that we had shot in his kitchen in January 21st or thereabouts. So we have decided, especially now with the events of the last week, and we'll get to those in a moment. Obviously, you know what they are, but we'll go into what's happening now. We have repostured the show and shot a lot of additional interviews, including one we're going to run in this show. We'll list all that later, exactly who's coming up and when. Some great interviews, so please do watch. And look, you may have nothing else to do for the next 2 weeks. Who knows at this point where things are going? We're going to look back at this episode someday, JB, and be like, well, boy, what was the history like back then? What was our society like? And, drawing a playbook right now is impossible. Maybe we draw one from moments like these later on. I don't know. But this has been a hellacious week. For me, I go from Springfield on Friday and Saturday of the prior weekend for the NCAA Division III men's basketball tournament. I get to interview players from your alma mater, Hobart, reaching the furthest they've reached ever in the tournament, going to the Sweet 16 essentially. And then great coverage, fun, thrilling time. And Monday, we start slamming the brakes on everything as Amherst decided to be the first one up. It seemed like with Princeton around the same time to say, spring term, probably not happening, at least not in the instant future. Face-to-face classes will be canceled. Stay on your spring break. Stay away. And then we're like, well, what does that mean for sports? And they're like, sports bye. And little by little, as the week went on, the dominoes fell.
Yeah.
Yep. NESCAC, IVs, all basically unified on it. And other schools started following suit. Union was one of the later schools. We'll talk to President David Harris of Union College later in this show to discuss how that decision was reached and why it took the timing it did and what happens from here. But JB, you're one of the most practical and realistic guys I know, truly, because I think with all the family you have, believe it or not, and everything, kind of gives folks your insight about how you approached this last week with the coronavirus scenario falling out the way it did. How's your mood? How's your emotion about life right now with sports kind of gone for the time being?
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of people initially, I was kind of in a state of denial that this thing was as bad as it seems like it could or potentially be. I had a hard time believing that the tournament was going to go away, and that as you saw the dominoes fall of these different sporting events cancel, the NBA postpones, and all this stuff sort of just hit. It was kind of a surreal moment. But if you really look into what's going on over in Italy, for instance. I mean, this is not a joke, and yeah, like you said. I mean, I've got a big family, 5 kids, between my wife Jen and I, sort of our Brady Bunch situation we have, and at the end of the day, we as parents want the kids to be safe. Obviously, you want everybody to be safe to the extent possible, and so you have to take this as seriously as we're being told to, and life is going to be disrupted. Fortunately, there are mediums such as this that allow for communication, and so school will continue in some form or fashion, and faculty and everyone else is going to have to adjust and kind of learn on the fly here. It's hopefully this isn't the new normal, but at least if this is going to be the best way to keep people safe, then we have to leverage the technology that we have in order to do that.
Indeed. I mean, we walk away from this in some very odd positioning for some schools in the first place. We've done a large piece on this back in your kitchen in January, but think of a school like Wesley that is basically being forced to merge with another school. And there are rumors as to who the school is. I do not want to go down that road because there's a single tweet that is named that school. We do not have any, let's say, double sourcing on something as important as that, so we're not going to mention the school. It would not be appropriate. Yeah. But there is definitely, the state has given money to Wesley, and they're forcing them to find a merger partner as part of the deal for the money. Now Wesley, they try to avoid the sending home of students in the interim for the spring term and all that stuff as much as anybody. In fact, they were, I think, the last announcement I got to see come out on, I think, Friday. And the reason probably is they know that if they do that and are forced to give back room and board fees at all, that could be a real problem financially for them and for any merger that they're involved with. We don't know the exact consequences of doing it yet, and President Harris kind of discusses some of the problem with giving a definitive answer on that, but let's face it, this doesn't help a school like Wesley and other schools that have some financial issues coming into this. And so do we lose programs as a result of something like this? That would be a travesty to see, and hopefully the federal government and the state government sort of rally here to protect these schools, and at least if they're going to fail, let them fail on their own, not because of something like this. And the students that go there, they deserve better than that kind of end also. I mean, what are your thoughts? Is Wesley going to be Wesley this year, or for the, let's say, next few seasons?
That's a good question. I mean, we did see the president announce the $1.5 trillion sort of stimulus to keep small businesses open. And to a certain extent, a lot of, especially private colleges, tend to be small businesses in certain respects. So whether or not they can tap into that remains to be seen. I mean, President Harris refers to it, which you'll hear in a few minutes, like a lot of colleges, including Union and my alma mater, Hobart, are having a tough time as it is. I mean, there are a lot of costs associated to running college campuses. Tuition has never been higher. So a lot of these schools out there have been in financial trouble to a certain extent in some form or fashion for a while because their college age group is growing smaller. It's getting more competitive to recruit kids, and the costs have not gone down for a long time. So losing the possibility of a whole spring semester worth of revenue, even though they're nonprofit organizations, is a big deal, especially for places like Union aren't going to close. They've got plenty of money in their endowment and that kind of thing. But for smaller colleges that are that don't have as much financial wherewithal, this could be a big issue if this runs out for a long period of time.
And we're hoping it doesn't. We're hoping it is only a few week thing, and then everybody will laugh it off and be like, "Oh, we all sort of overdid it." But I don't know if it will be that. And honestly, if I had to bet money right now based on what the reactions are, I don't think we're letting this thing run its course in its quickest way. And we'll talk more about this later. By closing the colleges. Personally, I don't think it was the right move for how we get out of this situation. Others will disagree with that. But ultimately, it's going to take a while because you're seeing it in other countries. There's kind of a pendulum going on where they think they're in the clear, then they get another hot spot somewhere, and then you're back on the other side of it again, and it keeps rocking back and forth. But like a pendulum, it's going to go like this and then start to slow down the swings and the wildness of the swings. But the question is that a 3-month thing? Is it a 3-week thing? Is it a 9-month thing? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
That's going to be the question ultimately. There are implications to athletes across the board on what has happened, as the NCAA had announced on Thursday that all spring and winter championships, and let's note again, spring and winter championships would be canceled at that point, that had not taken place at that point. The Division III basketball tournaments, men's and women's, were at the Sweet 16 round, as we suggested earlier, and they are done. There was some talk of possibly making the Division I tournaments a 16-team tournament in each case to sort of make it a kind of quicker scenario, take out a weekend and get it done with, and that was not ultimately done because most likely the NBA cases with the Utah Jazz caused the NCAA to basically have to pull the plug before they could actually consider it in earnest this week. They tried to buy as much time as they could. They could not. They made the decisions to cancel those championships, and as a result, the one committee has put forth legislation that should be approved. There will be a blanket waiver for all spring sports athletes in the NCAA's purview at the end of the day, to give them their eligibility year back, even if they play 10 baseball games or whatever else it may be. Ultimately, they will get it back. Now, here's some key wording, though. Doesn't matter if they go back to school and start their seasons up in some format. Let's say we get enough schools that they can get a makeshift out-of-conference schedule together, because the conferences really aren't sponsoring anything right now either. So it's all non-conference stuff, but look, they go back to school, they want to play some baseball, softball, lacrosse, whatever, they're going to have the opportunity to do it, and the NCAA probably won't say anything. But if they do, they still get the waiver. So the only thing ultimately the NCAA has stated here is that because we took away the championships and a little bit of the season guaranteed right now, you're going to get your waiver no matter what. And there are a bunch of winter sports athletes out there saying, wait a minute, if it's a question, if it's a question of the championships being removed, and a couple other small factors besides that, like at least a couple weeks of competition, well, I still had a chance to win a championship in Division III, or in Division I. I still had my conference tournament going on. There's still probably 120 men's teams still that would have either been in the main tournament, or the NIT, or the CBI, and then additional ones that were not out of their conference tournaments yet, that may not have made the tournament at all. You may have had actually 150 teams that were still alive, and all those players. Women's basketball, wrestling, individual sports like wrestling, swimming and diving, indoor track and field. Okay, they play these sports to ultimately conclude, hopefully, in the championship if they're of a certain quality, and that was taken away. There are arguments to be made, though, that they played their season, and so they shouldn't get their year of eligibility back. If you were the king of the NCAA world, what would you decide with respect to the winter sports athletes and their eligibility?
Well, a nice thing to do would be to grant that, but at the same time, like with you look at Division III men's basketball tournament, for instance. I mean, there's 430 some odd teams out there. Only 16 programs were remaining. So, does it make sense to give a year of eligibility back for those 400 something, teams that were already, had their seasons and were eliminated from the tournament. I don't know. I can see you making pros and cons cases for both sides. Ultimately, I have a feeling that the NCAA will just stick with the spring sports, and unfortunately, the winter championships are just going to just have to be sort of undecided. And I just think there's too many things to unravel with the winter sports. And for the most part, all the regular seasons had been finished by then. There just won't be a championship round.
The spring sports still have a lot of questions to have answered as well, because anybody that's going to take up the NCAA on the additional eligibility is going to cause some kind of havoc in scholarship schools in Division I and Division II, because ultimately there are only so many scholarships. So how many scholarships will they be allowed to have now if they do allow for extra eligibility for these players that weren't really in the system or anticipated to be in the system next year? Do they change those numbers? For Division III, roster sizes and whatnot, do those get affected in cases where there may have been a maximum, and do we expand those? There's a lot of questions to be answered. The NCAA has stated as much, but one thing's for sure, they're trying to work through it because they understand there is a bit of a Pandora's box mentality here that they've opened up by saying, we'll give the spring waiver. Well, where do we go from there? And where do we stop it, essentially, a la the winter sports argument? So this doesn't affect football, but it's a conversation that's instructive, I think, in general about things that are changing here and what we have to consider when something like this happens. But then football. This is the time of year when spring practices are supposed to go on, and a spring game possibly as well, inter-squad scrimmage type. Recruiting as well. I mean, we're going to have coaches on later in the week that are going to talk about what you lose in this situation, that have watched this for years, and how you coach around it, essentially. But, I mean, JB, you were a football player. You went through spring before, and you've seen your teammates go through spring. You've seen Hobart as an alum now go through spring and everything else. Is this a big deal? Is this going to be a big problem for these programs, do you think?
It's definitely a big deal. The problem will just be something that everybody shares, though. I mean, we've had multiple coaches on in the past, and all of them have talked about how just the structure of the NCAA these days, the amount of practice that these student athletes get has been lowered for a number of health and other reasons. So, every single practice time is very valuable to these coaching staffs, and particularly ones that, as we'll kind of get to later on in other episodes, especially new coaches that are coming into the run their programs for the first time. The practice time is valuable. I'm curious whether or not the NCAA may grant like a longer preseason, possibly in August, or perhaps there could be, if things return to normal by like May and kids can get back to campus, maybe they allow some practices there. We understand recruiting has been put on hold kind of across the board by the NCAA until April 15th. I don't know how that can be really monitored. I'm sure if, you get hey, coach, look at my film, and hey, there's probably going to still be phone conversations or texts or what have you going on. I mean, not saying anything's going, it's illegal or under the table, but it's the reality. A lot of college application admissions letters are going out usually around March 15th, April 1st. So, kids won't be able to go see campuses probably unless they've been up already. It's going to create some issues. And so it'll be interesting to see as this virus situation progresses, if schools reopen or if they just stay closed until the end of the semester. Definitely impacts the preparation. Though we might see some sloppy first couple of weeks of the season once we get down to September.
Indeed. And on top of that, the NFL draft, which is scheduled right now for April 23rd to 25th of 2020, becomes a little bit of a question mark too. Do they basically take the cue of us fantasy football players all these years and do an online draft as teams and not go to a central location? I mean, the draft can still occur. Yeah, hold on. I'm on. Got it.
I'm trading.
Hold on, I need a quarterback. No, but I mean,
Trade
seriously.
Rossi for no.
Oh, well, that's an easy trade to make right there, with nobody, a player to be named later. But, for 20 years, we've tested the software and everything else that they'll need to do it. Mm-hmm. Ironically, they may stoop to our level of fantasy draft type of status with the real draft if they have to.
Yeah,
but it's affecting.
What did we see in Nashville last year? It's like 600,000 people were on Broadway in Nashville. I mean, there's no way that the government's going to allow something like that, especially in a place like Las Vegas. So no boat rides on the Bellagio to the podium to get your jersey. I have a feeling that, like you said, this is going to be probably an online kind of situation.
But it's affecting the actual draft and recruiting, scouting going on at this point because pro days are going by the wayside. Nick DiCarano from Endicott, the kicker who has just really impressed a lot of people throughout the season, and then after the season was done. We're going to have him on the show. I believe we're going to drop his episode on Tuesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. The Italian-sounding last name is going to be on the Irish Day. That's how we'll work that. Maybe we'll put Fitzpatrick actually there. Actually. So maybe we'll put DiCarano on Thursday now that I'm looking at this. But we'll have him next week at some point. And we will make that change out of respect, I guess. But look, he's losing his pro day. All joking aside, he was supposed to be at Holy Cross in a couple weeks. Gone. He was supposed to go to a kicking coach in Alabama. That opportunity gone. And look, he's a great kicker as it is, and he's very consistent and strong. That was just to hone his skill. It's gone. Okay, that opportunity. We'll have an interview from a couple months ago with David Tamero that will run in about a week and a half on like Tuesday, give or take, the 24th of March. Talk about the small school showcase that he participated in. He had a lot of things he was going to be doing around this time from what I remember that interview. That may be gone. We'd reach out to him to see, and if we get any updates, we'll include those before we run that interview. But this is changing even that scenario around because this last month before the draft is when they would sort of still, working on some players that maybe they'll want to sign as undrafted free agents later on, or the late round draft picks that they weren't so sure about. This is going to really affect that, and I wonder how it does affect guys like, who was the St. John's player, Ben Barch, is it?
Barch.
Yep. I mean, he's been really impressing people out there, and he went to the combine and everything. And then, the stuff that he would normally do right now, does he start to fade because he doesn't have that exposure level that they can just go to the film and watch everything really easily because there's so much film in the Division I realm? Yeah. Does that affect them?
I think guys like Barch are going to be the exception because he did get invited to the combine and got to play in the Senior Bowl and go up against Division I talent. It's really the FCS and D2 and 3 guys that are really at the biggest disadvantage because they haven't had the same exposure and opportunity. So I think most GMs and scouts will be a little more reticent to look at them. So realistically, Barch probably gets drafted in April. But for the rest of Division III and smaller school players will not have that same opportunity and will likely have to count on their agents or whomever to get them on either training camp rosters as a UDFA and hope they can make an impression once they get to camp.
Indeed. This is, again, no playbook for this. So uncharted territory we're going to be going down. Again, I wish I could say I thought it was going to be a couple-week situation. I don't think it is, and so it's going to affect a lot of things down the line. I'll be interested to see when the NBA has to reconsider in 30 or now less than 30 days whether or not they're going to put something together to go forward then or maybe 15 days later or whatever. We don't know where it's going, folks, and all we can do is sort of give you some guide here as to how it affects the sport that we are most affiliated with, which is Division III college football, and then also give you some other information like we are right now. President David Harris of Union College joined us, the 19th president of Union, who has had some great exposure to the football team, especially the last year. He got to see that 10-0 Union College Fighting Dutchman team put up some great fights and against a Salisbury team that a lot of people rather didn't think they'd have a chance against. They lose 62-41 in that complete slugfest down in Salisbury, Maryland.
Crazy, yeah.
But I got to meet him briefly at the Hobart game, and we'll tell you more about that during this interview. But look, there are a lot of open questions about what happens at the school level right now with these situations of closing and no face-to-face classes and go home, stay home, and how it's going to work. And again, Union was one of the last ones. Here is our interview with President David Harris of Union College. President Harris, thank you so much for joining us, and great meeting you when Union beat Hobart back a few months ago. Sorry, JB. There's always next season, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
But obviously, this has been a hell of a week for everybody, and not in a good way for a lot of people. Union College is one of the last schools to announce closure, not one of the last necessarily, but deeper in the list than many. And a lot of people were questioning why that was happening. Some were happy with the decisions, some weren't. Can you kind of walk us through, let's say, the last 3 or 4 days where the decision was kind of a hedge, and then the decision was, yeah, we're closing here, or at least postponing face-to-face classes for now?
Well, yeah, thanks, Frank and JB. Thanks for having me on. And JB, don't feel bad because everybody lost to us this year, so it's okay. Except Salisbury. I'd say really, it's about the week, but for me, and I won't go through all of it, but it's been sort of a surreal 2.5 weeks because on February 21st, we announced the largest gift in Union College's history, a $51 million gift, supporting in particular our engineering and computer science, but also the integration of that with liberal arts. And it was the following Monday when I walked in and said to my staff, it's not if, it's when this hits us. And then we got going, and all of a sudden, I was in California last Friday, met with the Stanford president. Later that day, Stanford said they were going on 2 weeks online. University of Washington was earlier in the day. I came in here, got back, meeting with my team Monday, and then Monday was just dominoes. They started going Monday, they started going Tuesday. And we were actively working on trying to figure out what we were going to do. Part of the reason, I think the biggest reason you saw us being slower to announce is that we didn't have to announce as fast as some others because we have trimesters. So the semester schools were on spring break or about to go to spring break, and they had to tell their students, hey, don't come back or take your stuff with you. And for us, that was delayed a week or two because our students end classes this week, and next week is finals, then spring break. And so my position was, this is a really tough call. No reason to make it before you have to. So we were ready to make it Thursday, and then life intervened with the positive case on campus.
President Harris, one of the things I've admired about you since you've taken office, I guess you can say, is that you seem real savvy with technology. And I guess one of the positives coming out of this current situation is the fact that we have this technology, like we're video conferencing with you now. Your faculty will likely have to leverage technology like this to continue delivering some instruction. I mean, what's it like in 2020 now? I mean, kind of juggling the, wanting to stick to the traditional sort of liberal arts, brick and mortar, message in class instruction versus the reality of, hey, we might be on break for a couple weeks, maybe a month or so, and having this sort of platform in place to keep your students on track with their studies and so on.
Yeah, thanks, JB. It's one of the things my staff, I would say they probably get tired of me saying is I'm always talking about the year. So when we're trying to figure something out, I'll say, but it's 2019. Or now I'm saying, it's 2020. So for example, when I get a people to campus and they can't make it, I'll say, it's 2020. They could come by video. So the capacity's there. The challenge is the ability of individuals to take advantage of the technology. And some people are just more comfortable. Some people are more experienced than others. And that's what's really going to show in the next weeks, months, is it's just going to be a big challenge to roll out online education for hundreds of thousands. It's probably going to be millions of people at this point with 2 or 3 week notice with faculty, most of whom have never done this and most of them probably haven't even done a Zoom video conference, much less lead a course on Zoom.
Yeah.
And then compound that by not just think about your history class, but now think about thermodynamics, and now think about dance and sculpture. And I mean, it's going to be an experiment on a massive scale. And to your part of your point, I also think it's going to be a great advertisement for face-to-face education. Because what's going to be clear is, I mean, you both went to liberal arts colleges. You understand that you learn a lot in the classroom, but even in the classroom, there's a lot of benefit to sitting around and engaging. But you also learned a lot outside the classroom, interacting with your peers and faculty and staff. And you can email the faculty, but it's just going to be different than JB. I've been to Hobart Smith campus, but not enough to say this. But Frank, it's different from you're walking on campus, past the knot on the way to Reamer, who do you bump into, what conversation happens. It's just not going to be the same. And so I really hope this can be as short as possible. I deeply believe in what you both experienced and our students are experiencing.
I have always said that college is more of a social education than it is an academic education for many people, and so you do lose that aspect of it, at least for the weeks that we are out of session. So you're absolutely right. I think we do get some value, in not take it for granted as much when we have the face-to-face situation. Two questions for you. One a little brief up front here. The staff member that was reported as testing positive, how are they doing to the degree you can tell us?
Staff member's doing well. I've been in contact with the staff member since the day the staff member tested positive, checked in periodically, and really happy to say staff member's stable and at home. This is something where a lot of people in the population can test positive, and it really has minor impact on them. But, there are some people for whom this is life and death. So I'm happy to say that the staff member is stable and at home.
And we'll keep them in our prayers that they do continue to stay stable and mend completely from this. The one thing that's going to be tough for some schools to mend from is the financial impact. A lot of students have been asking the question aloud to schools, hey, what about the room and board portion that won't be utilized during this period? And we don't know how long it'll be, and maybe the entire term, it may not be ultimately. Or how about the student activities fees, for instance, which won't be utilized during that time? Has Union made a commitment in that realm? I know it's only a couple days since the initial announcement, and if not, what are you seeing out there from your colleagues out there in the presidential world of schools, universities? What do you think is going to happen, and how does it affect these schools' bottom lines?
Well, I'd say it's funny. I think I have I don't know how unique it is among presidents, but I bet there aren't a lot of us in this situation. I have a daughter who's a junior at another school who is actually studying abroad in northern Italy this semester. And so I actually am experiencing this as both a dad and a president, which has been really helpful because I can identify with those parents who are saying, wait a minute, my student's not there. Why am I not getting a refund? I'm paying for a room, but they're sleeping in my house. So I get that. I also understand school perspectives are saying in some cases, well, we're still delivering you education in a different form. You're still going to get a degree. You're not going to get a 90% degree. The room and board, I think, is something that we all see. It depends how long it goes. If these go long term, the longer it goes, the more expectation will be legitimately for some sort of rebate on folks, some sort of refund. But it's a big challenge, and it's a challenge for schools because most schools, there's a surprising number of schools just in New York State, private colleges and universities, that have been in the red for 3, 4, 5 of the last 5 years. And so this is a big revenue hit at a time when schools are already struggling. I understand the challenge, of course, is people are also struggling. And so it's just going to be big, and we're probably heading to a recession here, hopefully not too long. So schools are struggling with how to do the right thing and also do what they can afford. That's what I hear my colleagues say.
Yeah, and the other big question that we've seen kind of either tweeted at us or sort of bandied about in social media is the question, and the NCAA finally made an announcement that it sounds like spring sports are going to be allowing those athletes another year of eligibility, although realistically how many of them can actually take advantage of that is sort of a question mark. I mean, from a you're saying it's a tough time for colleges, revenue and otherwise. I mean, you know, is a kid going to be able to do online school and then come back and, you know, have to pay another round of tuition and that kind of thing? I guess I know there's still a lot up in the air, but what was your initial reaction, President Harris, when you saw the whole, you know, the eligibility question sort of put out there? Maybe you've had, you know, current students ask you about it. What are your thoughts on kind of where we're at right now and where we might go, since it seems like the winter sports may not be completely off the table yet?
Yeah, so I haven't had that many conversations about this since Thursday morning. I was having conversations in particular before, as folks were saying, you know, if you put us on 2 weeks delay, what's that mean for lacrosse, baseball, softball, other spring sports? And my heart goes out to those young people, you know, just in a tiny way. I appreciate it. Nowhere near the magnitude of what they've been doing, but, you know, students who are saying, hey, I'm a senior, this was my chance. I was going to be the captain. I was going to get a leading role finally. In 2012, I had started as the provost at Tufts University and was recruited. I had been a fairly serious cyclist up to that point, recruited in to run the Boston Marathon with the Tufts team in 2013. I was a little bit sick that day. I should have finished right when the bomb went off. Instead, I was a little behind, and I was between miles 24 and 25 when the bomb went off and got stopped. And so just in that small way, I appreciate these students saying, you know, in that case, it was only, you know, some December to April I was training every day, but I get it. You train really hard. This was the day, and then all of a sudden it's taken from you. What I just thought about in that context, and I hope these athletes, I know they get it as well, is, you know what, I really wanted to finish that day, but this was more important than me finishing that run. This was about people's lives, and, you know, we just stop that run and get to safety. This is a similar situation. The athletes themselves mostly aren't at risk, probably, but certainly the broader society is. But it's a challenge. I don't know how you restore someone's year of eligibility and say, go do something else, then come back. And you have to be a student to play. They're student athletes. So I don't know how that's going to work. But I certainly appreciate what the students are concerned about.
And the NCAA has a lot of questions to answer. They admit themselves. They put out the blanket waiver for spring students on Friday, and there's not much info to follow, or, as JB points out, the winter question, which is technically a valid one. We'll be talking about that in the show as well later on. President Harris, we also have to look forward a little bit here, and we're kind of looking at this as a hiatus for a couple of weeks or a few weeks for Union College and for a lot of schools out there. But ultimately, the question becomes this. What does it take, and I love the Union tumbler you got there, what does it take to, I got to get one of those. Why don't I have one of those, JB? There it is.
There you go.
So what will it take to get students back on campus? What line, kind of, to the degree that we can identify one here, do you feel needs to be crossed for students to be brought back on campus before, in Union's case, June, because we used to go out that far, and I think we still do at Union College, or May in other schools' cases, which may be a tougher call to have happen. But what will it take, do you think?
I think this is really hard. So first thing is that I've been clear, tried to be clear, that it's not 2 weeks and we'll see you for sure. So it's like a flight delay. I mean, I sort of say it's sort of like we're the airlines, we're the airport, we're saying there's a storm. We don't think it's safe to fly in that storm. We don't have very good technology to help us know when the storm will pass. We think in an hour it's probably better, but we'll get back to you in 45 minutes and let you know if the storm's cleared. If not, we might have to say it's another hour and then another hour. And at some point we may cancel. What we're doing right now is sort of, if you carry this out, it's analogous to send you through a different airport, right? We're saying instead of the face-to-face, we're going to send you to the airport called online learning for a little while. And hopefully we can get you back on track. But it's just really tricky. And what I said to folks also, and being a sports podcast, you certainly get it, is, all right, so I'm not going to ask whether you're betting people, but if we're going to put money down 2 weeks ago on whether March Madness would be canceled, right? Who thought that was coming? So
Nope.
I'm sure you guys, I
Me.
didn't. I would have said, no way. And if that's true, then I said to students and parents yesterday as I was talking as they were moving out, just walking on campus, if that's true, then how can I possibly predict 2 weeks from now? And so that's why it really is.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see, sadly. But it's hard. It's hard to know. It's hard. We have criteria for, if there's a case on campus, if there's so many cases near us, and what that tells us to do. The challenge is we're also dealing with the anticipatory. So there's no case on campus because there's no students on campus, or few. What do we think the probability is that if we come back to campus, we will end up with cases, and which will lead us to send people right back? So that's what we're struggling with.
JB, I'm going to take this one only because I think I can't make you ask the question about Union football season last year and what could happen next year. That would be unfair of me to do that. President Harris, obviously a great season for the Dutchman last year. Knocked out in a 62-41 slugfest at Salisbury in the second round of the playoffs. A lot of returning players. I think Griffin Beal may be one of the only players on offense not returning for the Dutchman. But I mean, football right now seems to have even a greater value right now because it may be the first sport or the first major sport, quote unquote, the baseball, football, hockey, basketball, the high profile sports that are out there. And I'm not trying to belittle soccer or swimming and diving and all those things. So folks, don't send your cards and letters yet. But it's a major high-profile sport out there in this country, and Union's college football team may help bring back some normalcy if we don't see students return until August, September, depending on the school. What do you think of this football program, this team, and what do you think about what's going to happen in the 2020 season, just from a normalcy standpoint, hopefully?
Yeah, well, I've been really impressed with our football program. I'm impressed with our coach, been impressed with the young men, been recruited, and them as students, as citizens, as young men. As I say to folks, I think I said last year at the banquet, the guys who were seniors last year, it's just amazing to think that they lost every game their first year and they hung in there. And they ended up winning 7, I think it was, their final year. And these guys similarly came into a program that was on the ropes and then had this amazing 11-1 run. And throughout, what I've said is to these guys is to realize that they may think that Coach Berman is a fantastic football coach, but what they don't realize is his job is actually to be a developer of young men. He just happens to do it primarily on the football field. And so it's in that context that I say there's great opportunity for all of our athletes and all of our programs, but especially football because it's so big. To the culture of that group of 100 or so, getting them moving in the right direction in the fall with the right spirit can have a huge impact, not only what they do in the classroom, but not only what they do on the field, but just what they do around campus, the vibe that gets set. And I know that they will be there. One of the things I love is when students move in, the football players are there because they've already been here for a couple weeks. They're there with their T-shirts on, Union football, moving people in. Mm-hmm. As soon as the car shows up, boom, they rush the car and carry the stuff. And that'll be a great sight to see come August.
Well, I know one date that I'm particularly – sorry.
Yeah. And also playing against Hobart hopefully, will be another great sight.
Yeah, well, I know I'm looking forward to, I think it's October 3rd. It's the day before my son's 14th birthday. It's always a big deal when Frank and my alma mater square off, and it'll be in Geneva this year. We won't get to see the fraternity house on the video shot, but it should be once again another great game between two great programs. So, President Harris, we'd like to indoctrinate you into an old in the huddle tradition. We offer all the coaches and student athletes. And occasionally NCAA committee chairs and other folks who we've had on over the years, the opportunity to do shout-outs. It's 2020, so we got to do shout-outs to any friends, family, or colleagues out there that might be watching the program that you'd like to say hello to. So floor is yours. Thank you again for joining us, and good luck with everything up there in Schenectady.
I guess the first really is just to this leadership of this school, one of the things that gets lost is that we have had to, and I'm going to tell myself, but my team, we've had to deal with things. There's no playbook. Nobody knew. I say it's akin to thinking you're going to only. It's the first time maybe there was a forward pass in a game, and the other team's thinking, "What's this all about? What do I do?" And we've been trying to figure out, something no one's seen. And what gets lost is that we all have families. We have concerns about our own health. And I just huge shout out to everyone on campus, not only senior leadership, people in dining, people in campus safety, people in student affairs, and so many more who I've seen on campus yesterday and throughout the week who are there doing their jobs, making sure that the students, families, the rest of the staff have what they need so that they can take care of themselves, and doing it in a selfless way. So it's a huge shout out to just everybody here and around the country and world who's doing what they need to do so that others can be safe and get done what they need done.
Amen, President Harris. Amen to that. Hopefully I'll be able to grab coffee with you or something in the near future, because I do owe you, getting to know each other better. You've been doing a tremendous job at Union, and we do appreciate you and your time right now. It's been a tough week, and the optimism and even the preaching of normalcy to a certain degree is very valuable in times like these. Thanks again.
Thanks, Frank and JB. And I hope this is, I hope it's the end of the beginning. I hope. For all of us.
Yeah, so I hope so too. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Again, thanks to President Harris for joining us. Very informative and an optimist. You can tell that he is hoping for the best here, and he's going to do everything he can to make sure that the student body at Union College comes out of this without problems. Look, Union's got a really good technology backbone there at the school. And if professors want to come into the classrooms to still teach from afar using the distance learning mechanisms, they're going to be able to do that at a school like Union because they have the technology and equipment to do it. Not all schools are that fortunate, and this is going to be a learning process for a lot of them. But I think we all are beginning to see this idea, JB, that the next real glimmer of hope for people who are sports fans, maybe Major League Baseball comes back, but for the pure feeling of an opening day that hopefully will go off as planned for a lot of schools, it's going to be college football, be it Division I, II, or III down the line in August and September. I mean, take it from there. What are you looking forward to as we begin to transition?
Well, I think the first will be, we'll kind of see what direction the NCAA goes with the waiver, as you mentioned, and how that may impact things, either opening back up the tail end of the spring semester, or if we're just going to see a complete shutdown and really August being when schools get back up and running. Hopefully this situation is well over by then. But my big question will be, preseason camps, is it the same? Does the NCAA grant a few more practice days to Division III or other football programs to help them catch up and be better prepared for week one? May just be, though, it's you get what you get and that's it. And so we'll see teams kind of evolve over the course of a season. And we might see some teams in week one that don't look so great, but that are actually playing for championships down the road. Just having that time to develop. Other teams might start off and look great and maybe fade down the stretch. We don't know. Last season was a lot of fun because we saw a lot of new faces when it came to championship runs and playoff races. There were some of the usual suspects like the Del Valles of the world and so on, but it was an interesting season kind of nationally. We've got a non-purple national champion for the first time in a while. So that was pretty neat as well. And Brock Rutter, speaking of pro days, was able to get his in before everything kind of canceled out. So I know he did well and is being looked at by some teams like the Chicago Bears in kind of his backyard. But unfortunately for the near term, it looks like D3 guys are going to have to do what they've basically had to do for a long time and just get into a camp and prove they can hang.
So, folks, we are going to conclude in a second here after some final thoughts, but we do want to give you some recap as to where we're going from here. Recap, I guess preview is the right word for that. Obviously, again, the President Harris interview, very good, and we, again, appreciate him. On the 17th, we have made that executive decision that I kind of talked out loud about, that Coach Fitzpatrick of Cortland, Kurt Fitzpatrick, will be joining us to talk about the coaching point of view of this. For somebody who was a head coach at Morrisville, he probably is a very good person to get some education about what this all means from. So again, that'll be Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. Nick DiCarano will join us on the 19th of March, that's Thursday, to talk about his journey. And it's a long interview, but the story I did not know about some of the stuff that happened to him in high school, and holy cow, you were like, how is this guy even kicking footballs 20 yards, let alone 50 yards or plus?
50 plus,
yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And just somebody you're going to kind of fall in love with in terms of just the guy he is when you hear his story and the journey he's taken. So make sure tune in for that on Thursday, March 19th. On Saturday, March 21st, Jimmy Robertson. We're coming full circle. He was actually the first guest on In the Huddle in 2008 when Eric Wren and I started the show in October 2008. Yep. Jimmy Robertson joined us.
It was September 24th.
It was that
late? It was September 24th, right. 2008. I think so.
Yeah, okay. I stand corrected.
Week 3 or 2 or 4 or something around there. It was right before a big game against Hobart, I think, actually, which is why I think I called in to bug you guys.
Of course, we previewed the conference back then. We only did the Liberty League back then, for a lot of people that don't realize that fact. But Jimmy was our first guest, and now he's a head coach. And he's going to also talk about some of the effects coronavirus is going to have on the FDU Florham football team, and some of the things he learned at Merchant Marine Academy under Coach Toop about how not having a spring practice scenario sort of can work, because that sort of happens at the military institutions. So he's got some experience with that.
They go out to sea.
Exactly. Tuesday, March 24th, David Tamero and Mike Riddleman. Riddleman is the director of the Small School Showcase and College Gridiron Showcase. Those are things you'll hear Nick DiCarano talk about a little bit. We want to sort of, even though these were older interviews that we'd never got a chance to run, this is a time when nothing else is going on, guys, that if you're a junior or going into your senior year of college, start thinking about the right all-star games to go to and whatnot, or skills showcases like these. And we give you a little insight about these. We don't promote them because it's your decision. Everything's different for everybody. But we want to give you some information about this one, or these two technically in particular, because they are up and coming, and we have been getting a lot of feedback about them. So we want to get you the information on them. And then Thursday, March 26th, we're going to do a final recap after we get some more details about where things may stand in a couple of weeks, and sort of look back at the interviews and pull out some thoughts from each one to kind of go over. So our philosophy here and In the Huddle is you got nothing much to do for the next couple of weeks when it comes to sports. So
we want to with us. All right.
Yeah, we're going to fill the void and get you ready a little bit, at least mentally, for the football season. That may still be 5 months away. We get it. 5.5 months away, really. Mm-hmm. But look, we're all in this together, folks. We understand it's a real adjustment to the way of life that you're used to. I keep saying to people, I don't care about testing unless you're working in healthcare, hospital, nursing home, whatever. If you're feeling sick and you're otherwise a healthy individual, young individual, like many of the people watching our show, don't go to a hospital, don't go outside, stay home, get better, and let's hope that you beat the disease, have the antibodies, and you're done with it at that point in time. If you're older or you are at risk, stay home now, isolate yourself. Nick DiCarano talks about that in his interview, a little bit about himself isolating away from his family out of caution, and it's something to think about. But make sure you stay away from folks that may transfer the disease to you, and if you are feeling symptoms, then go to the hospital if you're in those at-risk categories. It's pretty much, it sounds oversimplistic. The dog disagrees with me pretty much, I can hear in the background. But,
pretty much, yeah.
But look, we need to make sure that we don't get more people sick than we need to, but at the same time understand this disease is very beatable for people in the age group of college football players, among others, out there. So be careful. JB, what are your thoughts as long as the dog's going to let you talk?
Yeah, she's spooked by something, but yeah, I agree. I mean, basically, this is a time where you have to take advantage of the positives, which is you'll hear on some of these interviews. Opportunities to see your family, to be home, and take care of yourself. So at the end of the day, you got to stay on top of your personal health. Make sure that you're looking out for your friends and family, and basically just we'll have to wait and see how this whole thing plays out. Like you said, maybe it'll end up being much ado about nothing. But from what you sort of see and hear about over in Europe, you can't take this lightly. So just hopefully this will be this and some of these other episodes where you got teed up will be a welcome distraction for you D3 football fans in the short term. I know I'm going to miss watching the tournament, all that type of thing. In other sports, I feel my heart goes out to a couple of former guests of the show, like Andrew Franks and Jake Payne, who were playing in the XFL and they were having good seasons, and that got pulled out from under them again. But hey, it's just the way things are right now. We have to respect. This is a serious situation, and just do our best to take care of ourselves and the people we care about.
And as always, we kind of live for your feedback on social media, etc. So make sure you let us know what you think of what we're up to here. If you have any ideas or thoughts about anything else we could be doing, let us know. We are open to it. Like we keep saying, we don't know how much we're going to have to actually do in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Things are going to change a lot. Day by day last week, it was changing remarkably every day. And it felt like a month, not a week, if not more than that last week. We're through it. We're laughing. We're smiling a little bit more right now, which is good. And hopefully that continues. Yep. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you throughout the next 2 weeks here on In the Huddle.